Om Shanti. Today's chapter is titled A Sadhu's Poor Judgment. Baba's children were blossoming like spiritual flowers. They went out happily on their first expedition on God's service, that is, to offer the knowledge to others. But the enemies of Om Mandali had not given up. In their frustration, they fell to even meaner ways of preventing Baba's message from spreading. They succeeded in terrifying one sadhu, T.L. Vaswani, who was then drawn into their party. The story took place in Karachi. T.L. Vaswani was a well-known sadhu who had opened a school called Mira's Witness. There he held a regular satsang. He had been approached on several occasions by members of the anti-party who whispered false accusations about Om Mandali. Sadhu Vaswani believed the accusations as he had heard no reports from the other side, and those who had condemned Om Mandali were considered reputable people. Taking the slander for truth, the sadhu agreed to join in picketing against Baba's children. One day, Brahma Baba asked Sister Chandramani to visit the sadhu and talk about the spiritual perspective. She went with several others and asked the sadhu to please visit Om Mandali for himself before picketing against it. Ask those who experienced the satsang, the sister counseled Vaswani. Do not judge us on the basis of hearsay, told by prejudiced people. It would be wrong to create an uproar without knowing the truth. He listened carefully and he agreed the sisters were right. He was impressed with this young woman who spoke so straightforwardly and with such conviction, whose behavior reflected the kind of training which could only be called religious in the original sense. These women were following dharma, the path of righteousness. But what about their beliefs? The sadhu questioned Sister Chandramani about the knowledge. She explained with great clarity many points that are considered mysteries by Hindus. The key to the scriptures was revealed, and a logical, integrated picture of reality emerged from the maze of Vedantic speculation. Vaswani was astounded. Then the other sisters spoke of their experiences at Om Mandali, of their visions and realizations, and of the achievement of purity. They explained the high aim of the knowledge that God had revealed, and how the world was being transformed as a result. The sadhu became very happy. In fact, he was so overjoyed when the sisters invited him on behalf of Brahma Baba to visit Om Mandali that he jumped up and said, "All right, I will come with you right now." He prepared to accompany the sisters in their car, stopping only to tell his followers where he was going. But some of them were closely allied to the anti-party and objected immediately. Nonetheless, the sadhu headed for the car where the sisters were already waiting. His disciples quickly created an uproar. They surrounded the car before it could leave the driveway. "We will not allow you to go," they shouted at him, as if he were the disciple rather than the teacher. "Do not be afraid," he responded gently. "I'll be back in 1 hour." But the students feared that if he went to Om Mandali, he would be awestruck by Brahma Baba and would remain there and join his satsang, and then what would happen to all of them? He sensed the situation was critical. They sensed the situation was critical, and they would not move out of the way. In the end, the disciples succeeded in forcing Vaswani to change his mind. He got down from the car to placate his followers. Before going back to his house, he said to the sisters, "Tell Baba I am keen to meet him, but I won't be able to come just now. I will surely come some other day, as soon as possible." But his students, along with the businessmen of the anti-party, began immediately to work on him, and soon his old doubts about Om Mandali returned. He again began to believe the lies that was told about the institution. He completely forgot the joy he had felt in the presence of the Brahma Kumaris and their high aim and unique knowledge. Sadhu Vaswani was a good man, but he was weak. His false friends manipulated him to such an extent that the next week he joined them in a mob attack on Om Mandali. Thousands had gathered outside Om Nivas, the main building. They hurled themselves toward upon the property, ripped up the gardens, smashing windows, and even using a battering ram to break down a wall of the house. As they began to pour through the breach in the wall, the police finally arrived and drove them away. Many were arrested, Vaswani among them. The police took him away in their van. Tribunal, the next chapter. Vaswani was a sincere devotee of Krishna. He was well-meaning and had great faith in the Gita. People had sold him false ideas about Om Mandali, but if he had come even once to see Baba and hear him explain his principles, he would never have picketed against the spiritual university. He would have been pleased in the extreme with Brahma Baba's work. But now, because of his picketing and arrest, the atmosphere had become charged with hostility. The anti-party took advantage of the situation to fan the flames even higher. They put pressure on the Sindh government to issue a prohibiting order against Om Mandali. The Hindu officials gave in to the pressure and began in turn to threaten the Muslim members of the coalition. The Hindus declared they would resign if no order was issued. Should they resign, the government would fall. But the chief minister responded courageously in a speech to parliament. He said straightforwardly, "The Hindu members of the ministry have given us notice. They will resign, but we are not going to be pressured by such threats. Everyone has a legal right to worship God according to his own belief. Under which law can Om Mandali be prohibited?" He reminded his listeners that the great spiritual movements of the past had always begun with very few people, and that the great leaders were often persecuted. Such was the case now with Baba. The minister said clearly that whatever rightful demands were made of Baba had been met, and in reality, it is the hate-ridden anti-Om Mandali committee which, if anyone, ought to be prohibited. The speech was delivered on 26th March 1939 in the Sindh Parliament. In the end, however, when he saw that the ministry was being broken over the issue, his brave front was shaken, and he had to compromise. The government appointed a fact-finding tribunal. When the composition of the tribunal was revealed, then the true state of world's justice became clear. Only friends of the anti-party were included on the panel. One of the members was the chairman of the Sindh Observer, the newspaper which from the beginning had taken the side of the anti-party. The others had similar ties. Brahma Baba's children requested the more impartial members be appointed. In addition, they asked that efforts be made to quieten the local atmosphere before undertaking the investigation, and that Rule 166, which had been imposed, should be withdrawn so that Om Mandali members could meet among themselves and could see a lawyer. Brahma Baba's children asked for the right to have an attorney present at the hearings because the sisters of Om Mandali were ignorant of the laws, rules, and procedures. They also asked that the tribunal be given authority to call witness. The sisters suggested also that it would only be fair for the tribunal to reveal beforehand its method of operation and scope of inquiry. But the government took no notice of Mandali's suggestions. All were refused. The sisters were not allowed to employ an attorney. A very oppressive atmosphere was created. Mandali's representatives were not even allowed to talk among themselves at the hearing. So, in the end, Mandali declined to be present when the tribunal convened. Many members of Mandali had written to the tribunal individually stating they wanted to come and explain the ideas and action of that organization. But though they belonged to prestigious families, still none of them was called as a witness. At last, without hearing anything from Mandali or receiving any evidence from those who supported its work, the tribunal rendered an ex parte decision. The members of Mandali should no longer be allowed to stay together. The tribunal recommended all the members be forced to separate immediately. It was indeed a strange decision that caused an uproar the government was not prepared for. The recommendation was strange, not merely because the members of Mandali were like one large and close-knit family, but because Mandali was actually composed of whole clans as well as unattached individuals. Many families came as a group to the daily satsang. Should these households be forced to scatter? Should wife be separated from husband? Should a son be made to live apart from his parents? The tribunal was unconcerned with these human realities and was clearly biased against even the most elementary rights of those who belonged to Om Mandali. Even the press came down with scathing criticisms of the tribunal's opinion, and many educated people wrote letters to the editors protesting the injustice. Everyone should have freedom of religion, began one letter by a local dignitary. The letter was sent to the governor. It discussed the law under which Mandali was asked to disperse and clearly showed that the law was meant to apply only to subversive, troublesome political groups. It had nothing to do with a spiritual institution like Mandali. Clearly, the members of this organization were peace-loving, religious, and social reformers. They ought to be encouraged, not made to disband, the letter concluded. But where is justice in the present world? Not heeding even the High Court's opinion, the frightened politicians oppressed the satsang to save their ministry. Mandali was not informed of the content of the tribunal's deliberations. They were refused a transcript of the hearings or even a summary. They could not learn who had been called as witnesses or what their testimonies were. In addition, no reasons were given as to why the decision came out the way it did, nor on what charges it was based, nor what proof was presented. In short, justice had not been awarded. When the first storms passed, though, the situation improved. The chief minister having done what he had to in order to pacify the forces of the anti-party, advised Mandali informally that they could keep 4 or 5 bungalows located near each other, and that if they maintained a low profile, they could go on with their satsang. The protests and pressures would die down in a little while, the minister consoled them, and the government had no intention of actually taking any steps against Mandali. The father acts to please the children, so it was done as they wished. The children settled down once more into their work, and Shiv Baba continued to come into his medium's body each day to deliver the knowledge. Everything continued flowing smoothly. Even the morning bus rides to Clifton Beach with the children continued as before. Yet the people of the anti-party who had come to Karachi from Hyderabad in order to destroy Mandali still did not give up. They stirred up whatever sort of trouble they could. But they had taken their best shot with the tribunal and it had not worked. Now their energy was waning. They saw that they could not stop these people. that Brahma Baba's children were filled with unshakable love for knowledge, for purity, and for the service of uplifting the world. The antagonists became wary and one by one returned to Hyderabad. They had achieved nothing except a waste of their time and money, but still they thought that one day Baba's money would run out. He cannot keep on spending and spending forever to take care of all of these women and children, they told each other. And then all those people will crawl sheepishly back to their families. This attitude showed that their ignorance was still intact. They could not understand that Om Mandali was not founded or maintained by any human being. This was not simply another devotional or bhakti group or religious academy. This was God's own world university, founded by the Supreme Being Himself. Yet the antagonists latched onto the base hope that Om Mandali's funds would run out, and they did their best to make sure this happened sooner than later. They ran an editorial in the newspaper suggesting that no one should donate to the organization. They did not realize that Om Mandali had never asked for money in the first place from anyone. God's work is based on yoga and on faith. How could an economic boycott affect it? Its work now expanded peacefully. Meanwhile, the parents who had taken their daughters back home, either forcibly or by court order, began to relent. They saw that they could not make the girls accept any of the things on which their life was based, neither meat eating, nor expensive clothing, nor cinema, nor marriage. The girls simply continued in God's remembrance and refused to participate in what they considered to be impure or wasteful activities. But finally, but love finally went up. But love finally won out. They asked themselves why they should deprive their daughters of the best spiritual education as long as the girls were determined to follow the spiritual path anyway. Gradually, they gave their children permission to return to the Father's Academy. Brahma Baba welcomed them home and took care of them as always without fee. For was he not their father? These lucky children had three fathers: a father of their physical body, a spiritual father, Brahma Baba, and the supreme father, Shiv Baba. We'll stop here today and continue tomorrow. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you.